Does the clicker work? Okay. It's fine. Okay, good morning. In case anyone missed it yesterday. Oh. Better?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. In case anybody missed it yesterday, my name is Alysia Flynn. I work in 3VPICU at CHLA, and today I'm here as with my PDC technical lead hat on. How do I make it go? Oh, there we go. So, contrary to what Nelson said yesterday, some of us in this room are data nerds who would be totally happy to sit in front of a computer all day, writing code and playing with data. So I'm going to talk to you about the infrastructure today, the various elements of it, but I'm going to try to keep it fairly high level. If anyone has any additional questions or more detailed questions, please feel free to come and ask anytime or at the end, because I could talk about this all day, but I want to keep in my time limit. So I'm going to skate over some of the things in the presentation. Quickly, I'm going to talk about the infrastructure, what we built, how it's built, a little bit about the data, although I think a lot of that was covered. The data pipeline of how we're ingesting and transforming data, and kind of where we are as of today. And then at the end, quickly give thanks to all the team members that have helped put this together. So we have this built on the idea that we have our 10 sites, and each site has in a landing zone, which is sort of separated off from everything else. You have your own folder that you upload your data to, and only your site and the administrators have access to that initial upload folder, because at that stage, even though we've requested de-identified information, we haven't done any checks or validation to make sure that it is in fact de-identified. So once we have a little feedback loop here that I'll talk about more when I talk about the pipeline. Once everybody's happy with it, we're happy that you submitted what we asked for, you're happy that your data is what you intended to send, then we move it across. We create an archive copy just so we can go back to the source if we need to. We do some cleaning and harmonizing that Nelson sort of alluded to, but I'll talk about again in more detail a little bit further on in the presentation. And then there's another little feedback loop. We can do additional quality assurance here once we have everything mapped to a consistent nomenclature and all the data together. We can do stuff that we couldn't do over here on this end. So then we publish it to CSV files that can be downloaded if necessary, and also we're going to make it available in a SQL server. These two up here are a little bit more future work. We can push it out to the dashboard or other visualization tools. There's a whole suite of machine learning different tools that are available as well. So we're built on top of Azure Cloud Services. It's slow. We're able, because we're in Azure, we're able to use everybody's existing single sign-on for their institution, so we don't have to manage or know anything about anybody's logins. It just redirects you to your institutional login page, which is great. We're using the built-in role-based access controls that are available in the Azure ecosystem. All of the storage is in Azure Gen 2/blob storage. You can sort of treat it as either. The pipeline is built in Azure. Oops, where's my? Oh, that's what I did. Okay. Built with Synapse Studio, and we have, I didn't put Git in here, but we have GitHub repositories for version control and for access. So everyone, all of the PIs have access to all the code and the development there. And then finally, a SQL Server, again, hosted on Azure. In our future work, the beautiful dashboard that Nelson demoed, we're really hoping to be able to put that to use the Azure Web Apps service. And then again, because it's Azure, there's a whole universe of additional services that are available to us for various aspects of the pipeline, from automating the API or the uploads through an API to machine learning training and and other things along those lines. So that was the infrastructure. A quick look at the data. So this is, I go really fast on this because I think we've answered a lot of these questions. It's primarily EHR data, although for sites that are VPS sites, we're more than happy to have you submit the data that's already been curated through VPS. That's not all of the data, but where it exists in VPS, why do that again? It's primarily nurse charted. We asked for billing diagnoses if you have not. Why did I say it? I keep saying that. We asked for clinical diagnoses if you have them, billing diagnoses if you don't have clinical diagnoses. It's very, very granular, so we want all the heart rates for this patient over the course of the hospital admission. There's no aggregating, and again, it's submitted de-identified. This is a very high-level overview of the schema, the different types of elements we have asked for. It's a star schema, so you've got hospital admissions in the middle, and everything else sort of comes off of that because obviously I can't have any information about a patient if the patient wasn't there. We've got 2 optional tables, scores and intubations. So we've got scores from a handful of sites. I think those are mostly sites that are using their VPS data because it's easy to get the different scores out of there. And we asked for, in addition to like the PIM and the PRISM, the GCS scores, a variety of things. Any questions about the data while I'm here before I move on? Yeah.
What kind of interventions are you talking about?
There's ventilator settings.
No, I think this is start and end of intubations for the site that have collected that data.
Oh, in this one.
Yeah, otherwise
sorry.
we have in interventions we have all the ventilator settings so we can estimate when you start and enter an intubation. But some sites have collected start and end times for intubations if it's part of their data collection, so we will never stop.
But it's not just ventilator settings in the interventions. It's ECMO and yeah. Yeah.
Could you just comment on the billing diagnosis and the clinical diagnosis? I'm a little unclear how you're reconciling that, and what if a site has both? What's the process and how do you handle that?
At this stage, we have a column where we've asked people to label what kind of where the diagnosis came from. Was it clinical or was it billing? Until we.
Sorry, I meant who's determining that?
Each site is determining that. So depending on where they're pulling that data from in their own systems, we'll tell them whether it was entered by a doctor or entered at the stage of billing.
But there's no attempt to homogenize that. It stays as 2 different fields.
Eventually,
and the clinical are 2 different fields.
Eventually, if you want to do a project that includes both, you can. We have it available.
So there are 2 discrete fields right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah?
So the VPS data is limited but clean and validated.
Mm-hmm.
The EHR data is broad but dirty. How do you merge those 2 together when you have some VPS things and some not?
So the VPS data fits into a handful of the tables. At CHLA, we use the VPS data for most of the hospital admissions and demographics, the ICU admissions, the scores, and then all of the and the conditions and procedures. And then all of these events here, those are all our nurse charted events that come out of our EHR.
So you don't use your EHR data for the data that's available for VPS? You don't have two different values for the same measure?
No. We could, but we know that there are conflicts and we trust the VPS data, so we chose them at CHLA.
Just follow up with that. You're saying that each institution actually can decide if for a particular thing they're going to use VPS or EHR?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not all of the sites are VPS sites as far as I know, so we didn't want to we really, from a data perspective, we wanted to make it as easy for the data teams as possible. I mean, my dream would be that if you have VPS data, you don't need to do anything to it other than anonymize it, de-identify it, and send it in the VPS structure that it comes out of the My VPS portal, and just send it that way, and that we can map it to our schema on our side. But we're not quite there yet. Yeah.
I just want to ask about the timestamps on these. You said that the dates are removed, but you said I want
Mhm.
encountered. So is it given like this heart rate is plus 3 hours since admission and this heart rate is plus 6 hours since admission?
Yeah, I would have to go back to the documentation to be 100% sure about the exact details, but I think what we did, we asked for age at admission for the hospital admission, and I think that's in days, and then everything after that is measured in seconds since hospital admission, and that allows us to track. So if you have one patient who has 2 different hospital admissions, you can use the age at hospital admission of each of those to track the exact distance between them. And then within the admission, you can track, because you have everything off that initial start point. You can tell exactly how long before they entered the ICU, their length of stay in the ICU, et cetera.
You know, just to follow up on the EHR data isn't raw, it's seared at least.
It's dirty though, it's dirty.
Well, I mean, define dirty, it's cleaner than a source. So a schema is sent to each site, and then the extraction is based on that schema. And so it is already curated locally to adapt to the schema, and then curated and harmonized again when it comes into the central location. So it's much cleaner than if you had looked at a raw file.
But you're still gonna have negative 4,000 respiratory rate and
But-
4,000 kilo 1-year-old.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but you can identify them really quickly, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, Neil, that's the data we use to make decisions on our patients. That's the data that our residents are looking in the morning and reporting in rounds to make decisions, right? So it's not garbage. It's what we use every day. So
I think if it's all right, one more, and then just so I can try to finish in the time. Yeah, Rishi?
So what's the rationale behind not using the dates? Because I assume you're losing a lot in seasonality and in kind of temporal.
Dates make it a limited data set and not a de-identified data set.
You could shift it, right? You could do a date shifting and keep the dates at least they're somewhat sentinel.
So we do have year of hospital admission. We have this debate in our NVPICU all the time. And so one of the considerations is we want people to join, and we don't want them to have a big, long fight with their legal department about whether they can submit this data. And we know that this is something, it's anonymized, it's de-identified. This is something that most legal teams could get on board with. I would love to have that seasonal data. I'd love to have a limited data set and timestamps, and I think we will ultimately, but we needed to get over this first proof of concept hurdle that we can do this and we can harmonize it and we can make it work before we then, now we have leverage to go back and say, hey, let's make it better.
But you keep the raw dates in the safe harbor space, right? You can't go back.
No.
we're not collecting that.
It's sent already done. It's
Yeah.
already identified. It's not, there's no limit data set.
And it's really easy for data analysts to
Data set, but it's the trade-off that she's mentioned.
very easy for data analysts to calculate a difference in dates and report that, and then have a whole schema for day shifting and keeping the so
That's
it's
true.
easier.
So I mean, I would nowadays, I think date shifting has become very acceptable for de-identification.
All right, join the collaborative and vote in the.
And will you certify the de-identification and take responsibility for it?
Well, if it's date shifted,
For our data?
I don't know.
Yeah, part of it is it depends how much. Like if you want to keep seasonality, how much can you shift the date? And if you only shift the date by a month, you could argue that that's still more granular than a year because you have a short window. Even seasonality at all, just listing seasonality, you could say that's more granular than a year because you're saying that this patient wasn't in the spring, this patient was in the summer.
There are ways in which you can keep the sentinel events relative. Like if there's an RSV outbreak, right, and it suddenly spikes the census of the PICU, you want to know that and you want to kind of model for that, right? So I think there is a real advantage to keeping that.
Okay. Oops. Did I go? Oh, there we go. Okay, so quickly in my last 30 seconds. Very quickly, I will just highlight some of the aspects of the data pipeline. There we go. when we started this project, we had some underlying principles that were guiding us. And I think Nelson has mentioned a few of these. So the transparency, we want everyone who's involved in the project to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, partly so that if you disagree with it or if you find an issue that we didn't pick up, we can crowdsource that. You can come back to us and let everyone know, and we can have a debate about it. The other thing is we don't want to lose data as we move through the pipeline. So every time we do any transformation to the data, whether we rename it or whether we decide that all of this medication is going to be measured in micrograms per kilo per minute, and we have to convert the ones that weren't, all of that, we create a new column for the new data, and we retain the column of data that was originally submitted to us. It does make the schema, it grows wider as it goes through the pipeline, but it means that you always have the option to go back. And again, with that transparency, it means that each researcher has the ability then to take a look at what we did and decide if it's right for what they want to do. So the data pipeline has three main components. One, under that landing zone I mentioned earlier, when the data is originally submitted, we do some basic checks. It's supposed to be de-identified, but we want to make sure that it is de-identified and that there's nothing in there unexpected. So we look for timestamps. We have some checks on strings that are not common, and then also, are the IDs the same across, are the anonymized IDs matching across all the different tables? Do I have the same list of patients and interventions that I have in my hospital admissions? At this stage, we can do some very basic quality assurance. Did you submit the files we expected you to submit? Did they have the column headers we expected? Did you submit only vitals for only 20% of your patients? So, things that are obvious red flags. We make a report that's reviewed by the honest broker, who is me, and then we send the report also back to the site PI, and then we have a little feedback loop if any of us find something that we're not happy with. And there have been instances where I said, we're good, and the PI said, no, we want to fix some things. Once everyone is happy with how the data that's been submitted, we bring it across into our data platform. Again, we make that archive of the raw so that we can, or not the submitted version, we can go back. We do a complete re-anonymization. So at this point in the project, you can't go back. You can't take the aggregated data set and say patient 123 is patient 123 that we submitted. And that way, if there were any anonymization issues that we missed in the submitted data, if someone submitted MRNs and we didn't know it, because how would we know it, they're not going to be in our aggregated data set. It also gives us flexibility because we had to put no constraints on what you can use for your IDs. I have 5 or 10 digit numbers or integers from one site. I have a 12-digit hex hash from another site, and that's fine. Whatever was easier for their data team to do. We're assigning new ones. We can make sure that there's no conflicts. The harmonization, where this is a heart rate from site A, this is a heart rate from site B. Nelson mentioned we can do QA here at this step. And again, some of this italicized is we're not quite there yet. We're in our minimum viable product. But it will generate a report with more detailed QA, which again is going to go back to the PDC site PI for review, and then also be reviewed by members of the scientific committee to make sure that, again, that everyone's happy with where it is. Once we're all happy that everyone has submitted the data that they want to submit, we publish it out. So we really would like to have the dashboard be available to all the PIs all the time. We're still working out some kinks with the SQL Server. It's up and running, but we're still allocating some resources or dealing with some issues, and then CSV files. And we have a theoretical plan in place for when and how different sites can access the data for different projects. At this stage, we are really in our MVP, our minimum viable product. A lot of things are still manual and a lot of work for me or for the PIs, but we are looking toward the future, toward how we can automate this and how we can make the burden lower for everybody. So just as an example, right now, this middle part of the harmonization has been done manually, where sites have been given pairs and they go back and forth to agree. But in the future, we have a lot of different ideas for ways that we can automate this, validate it, and again, take that burden off. So just as an example. So where we are now, the Azure infrastructure is up and running. We are making ongoing improvements to it. The data pipeline, again, it exists. It's our minimum viable product. We got data from 4 sites from submission all the way through out into that dashboard. I'm very proud of that. But again, ongoing development. And then I think Nelson covered the data set pretty well where we are with that. Very quickly, I would like to thank the VPICU team who are here today that helped make this happen. Wave your arms when we do it. Mike, who handles our infrastructure and operations. Eugene, who's been working with me on the pipeline. Alice, who made the dashboard. I've been acting as the technical lead and had my hands in all the pies. And Melissa Axon, our team leader, who is going to speak next as our data science expert. Thank you, everyone. I'm around all day if anyone has any other questions. Oh. And I forgot our wonderful scientific committee, because we could not do this without them. That's the end. All right. Okay.